Hello? Okay. Sorry about that. Had some technical difficulties. We're all good now? Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the City of Graham City Council meeting for December 10th, 2024. Appreciate everyone taking your time to be here tonight. We'll ask for the invocation. Bobby, would you?
Sure.
Thank you. Please bow your heads.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity that we come together as servants of our community to do your will. Grant us wisdom and discernment as we go about doing the business of our community. During this holiday season, let our hearts be filled with the joy that we look forward to the birth of your son Jesus. Dear Lord, we ask your blessing upon our community. Watch your will guide us and let your will be done. These things we ask in your son Jesus Christ.
Amen. I'll have you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to read through the consent agenda. A, to approve the November 7th, 2024 special meeting and November 12th, 2024 City Council meeting minutes. B, to award a contract to Park Construction of North Carolina, Inc. for the $8,160,012 that includes a 5% contingency for Phase 1 of the 10-inch water line replacement project. We'll be running a new water line. The existing water line, I think, dates back to the 70s, something like that. Is that right? Is that right? We'll be running a brand new water line out to our water treatment plant, right back into the city. And that project is a contract to start Phase 1 of that project. C, to approve an amendment in the audit contract with Stout, Stewart, McGowan, and King to allow time extension to February 28th, 2025. D, to approve an amendment to the 2024-2025 fee schedule to reduce backflow annual testing for irrigation accounts from 1042 to 348 effective January 1, 2025. E, to approve a budget amendment recognizing 1449 in insurance proceeds revenue and increase the police department vehicle maintenance budget by 1449. F, to approve a budget amendment in the amount of $15,000 in state drug forfeiture revenue to the state account balance for use. Item G, to approve a resolution prohibiting the viewing of pornography on city networks and devices as required by North Carolina General Statutes 143-805C, and to approve a budget amendment for $16,000 for software implementation. H, to approve a budget amendment recognizing $425,000 in loan proceeds for the purchase of a sanitation truck. I, to approve tax releases for 1868.73 and tax refunds for 588.19. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak on any of these consent agenda items?
Madam Mayor, would you just amplify G a little bit as to what the origin of that is?
I believe that is a new state requirement. Is that correct,
It's
Megan?
state statute that was adopted, I believe, over the summer and goes into effect January.
We already have a personnel policy that says you cannot be viewing pornography on any city device. So if you have a city phone or you have a city computer and you're doing that, you are already in violation of your employment agreement. But the state of North Carolina has implemented something that says that we have to implement this new software. And so that's what we're doing. Did I say that correct, Megan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in regards to the $15,000 in state drug forfeiture revenue, I believe that was to be used for outfitting the cars, right?
13,000 was proposed to be used to secure weapons in the vehicles. It's a certain type of mounting apparatus that holds certain weapons that secures them in the vehicle, and 2,000 is for a grant match that the PD is pursuing for wellness.
Hearing no other comments or any comments by the council in regards to this? Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as written.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is the rezoning of 4.7 acres off Hanover Road and Jeffrey Street. A public hearing has been continued to consider the rezoning of 4.7 acres from I-1 Light Industrial and RG General Residential to CR Conditional Residential to construct 41 townhomes off Hanover Road and Jeffrey Street. This was continued from the December, I thought I cut my phone off. I'm sorry about that. This was continued from the November 12th, 2024 City Council meeting. Planning Board, this did come before Planning Board before that, I believe in October, or maybe it was even September.
November, wasn't it?
What
It
was it
was,
in front of Planning Board? Because it was postponed twice, right?
It was October planning board, and then
Okay.
it came to us for November, which was tabled till.
And Planning Board recommended denial 5-0. So I don't own property that is adjacent to this property, but I do own property that is within the same neighborhood, I would say. So, is it your intention to move forward tonight? Okay, so I need a motion and a second to allow myself, the mayor, to be recused from considering this item due to owning property near the proposed rezoning.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we allow you to recuse yourself from this, action.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And I will pass this torch on to Ricky here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ricky.
Let me state, for the record, we will give everyone ample opportunity to speak. You will be limited to 3 minutes. Aaron, if you'll, bring us up to speed.
Yes, sir. As the mayor mentioned earlier, this is a request that was tabled from last month, is to rezone 4.7 acres of property from I-1 Light Industrial and RG General Residential to conditional residential for the purpose of constructing 41 townhomes. The site plans to connect public roadways, water and sewer through the existing utilities surrounding the property. The property is fully inside of the industrial warehousing future land use zone. There isn't anything that has the future land use that's mentioning that it needs to be residential. Instead, it does reference that area for industrial. The site falls under the 5-acre threshold for requiring open space, but it has been provided according to the site plan. All lots will have 2 driveway parking spaces and 1 garage parking space. The project does meet the RMF density requirement listed in section 10.245 of the City of Graham Development Ordinance. As mentioned earlier, the planning board did hear this at their meeting in October and recommended denial based on the initial site plan. Since that meeting, the developers have updated their plan to address comments made by the planning board members and the surrounding residents as well. The adjustments to the plans were dropping the units from 53 to 41, increasing the exterior property line setbacks from 15 to 25 to meet the RMF standards noted in the development ordinance and planning will suggested type C criteria, as well as adding a opaque fence around the northern and southern residential properties, increasing the active open space area and relocating and increasing the gas parking. The developers are requesting a condition of reduced building separation of 12 feet from the required 25.
All right, sir. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Yes, sir. Good evening. If we could pull up my slides, please. Good evening. My name is Amanda Hodiern. I am here tonight on behalf of the property owner and the contract purchaser and would-be developer, which is Citizen Properties LLC. That entity is comprised of David Wyatt and Brennan Wyatt. So they are the principals of that group here with me tonight. We also have with us our civil engineer and designer that has prepared the plans that are in your packet and that we'll talk about. That's Sam Nye, who's here for his expertise if we should need him. Great. So I want to, if we can go back to the previous slide, if we can, I'd like to thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate your time, not just because it's a cold, rainy night during the holidays, but because, you know, we recognize that you're here as a public servant doing the business of the city of Graham for the city of Graham. And I recognize that that's not an easy task because it asks you to act in the interest of the city of Graham, which is a tight-knit community. You all know each other. You see each other outside of these chambers and within these chambers. But the task in front of you, particularly rezonings, asks you to act on behalf of the city rather than colleagues, friends, neighbors, and folks that you see within that community. And that's not easy to do. And I recognize that. Fortunately for us, if we could go to the next slide, the state of North Carolina statutes give us a guideline and a framework to guide boards like yourself on how to do that and what is the proper way to administer that high bar and task before you so that we ensure we're looking at the right things and we don't get sidetracked with everything else that you're talked to about and asked to listen to in your role as council persons. So this is our statutory analysis requirement. It comes from 160D, of course, and I know you see this. You see it every month in your packet when it asks you to make a motion. It asks that you address the consistency with the adopted comprehensive plan, and then that you state in your motion why you believe your decision to be reasonable and in the public interest. So that doesn't mean that the comprehensive plan is the sole factor. It doesn't your decision doesn't live or die on what that plan says, but it is asking you to evaluate that plan and then put forth a decision that's reasonable and in the public interest, with that plan being one of the factors. So why is that so important? Again, because there's a lot of information coming at you, and we want to make sure that we're applying the right criteria and the right decision points as you try to filter all that. So what that gives us is a roadmap to these types of decisions. We look at comprehensive plan guidance, and then we look at, is the proposal before you reasonable and in the public interest? For reasonableness, we look to things like zoning context, the land use pattern, comparison of what's being proposed against what could already happen. By right uses, we call that. What does the existing zoning already allow without any of this rezoning procedure? And then we look at, is the plan in the public interest? Factors that speak to the public interest are things like compatibility and what is the highest and best use for the property for everyone, for the community, for the city's objectives, long-range growth and planning, and for the neighbors and those most immediate to the property they're going to live with it and feel the impacts. So that's how we're going to talk about this tonight. The proper application of this test is what guides us to decisions that we all know are carefully deliberated and intentional, and within the context of all the things that have been deemed important to the city of Graham outside of the vacuum of this one rezoning. That's why we have this larger context text to guide our decisions so that we never lose sight of what the goals are for your growth and objectives. So if we could go to the next slide. Before we get into those specifics, I just want to quickly summarize our request. Your property is identified there with your tax number. It's 4.7 acres, currently zoned RG, which is residential general, and I1, it's split zoned. Those districts allow for a large variety of by right uses. You all know this, residential general means any type of housing. So it could be anything from apartments to manufactured housing to single family. I1, of course, is your light industrial district, which also allows for a wide variety of your light industrial uses. The proposed zoning that we're asking for is conditional residential. So what this looks to do, and we'll get more into detail, but we're looking to consolidate the zoning here into one single land use. The one we've elected to try and go for of the two that already exist is residential. Importantly, you'll see conditional residential is what we've asked for, rather than just asking to change the I-1 to RG. So we'll get into that more later, but it is important that we didn't simply just ask to zone the balance to RG. Rather, we've asked to take the whole site plan under consideration, the whole parcel under consideration with a site plan as a conditional residential proposal. So we could go forward, please. This is our subject property, just to orient everyone. The zoning map there shows the parcel highlighted in turquoise or teal, if you will. You can kind of see underneath that highlight the split zoning that I'm talking about. The light color is that light purple indicating your I-1 or light industrial district. And the darker area is that taupe color, which indicates your general residential or residential general district. So that's how that property is split. On the other side of the screen, we just have an aerial photograph. The red star indicates where the property is. And this, just so we can see it in context and what's around it, as we all may recognize the property when you drive around or look at it on Google Maps. It's just making sure we all know where we are. Moving to the next slide, we're going to address that first prong of your statutory analysis that we talked about, comprehensive plan guidance. That's where our legislators ask us to look when we first look at a zoning case. And you heard about this in Mr. Holland's report. The comprehensive plan was addressed there, and so we're going to delve into it a little bit more here. The future land use plan designation, that's one aspect of your comprehensive plan, and it does designate this area as industrial. You see that in your staff report. You heard it from Mr. Holland. We're of course asking you to deviate from that with this residential request that we're going to present. So I'd like to elaborate on that and submit to you the reasons why we think that's an appropriate request to make of you, and why that is, we believe, will be proved to be reasonable and in the public interest. As defined in your comprehensive plan, that the description of industrial in the adopted comprehensive plan has some defining characteristics that this designation of industrial is supposed to accomplish. Two of those cannot be met with this particular parcel. One is that this district is supposed to have easy access to the I-85/40 interstate corridor. This property does not. The other is that it's supposed to be heavily buffered from residential uses. Due to the size and geometry of this site, that's also not feasible here to heavily buffer and create a viable building footprint for an industrial use. So already we've got some conflict with the objectives of this designation when we look at it applied to this specific parcel. As we delve further into that and really try to vet it, I wanted to look at industrial site selection criteria, how that's applied, and see could that ever work on this parcel. So to do that, I reached out to Kevin Zozak at the Alamance Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Department, who, of course, in his role guides these types of decisions. And I just said, hey, talk to me about this site. Does it seem like a good candidate for industrial? So I know that he is a resource for you all, so I wanted to speak with him if we're asking to change this designation. He said, don't get me wrong, if an industrial user came in and wanted to be here, of course, I would support that, as our office would. However, that is not the case, and certainly there are some apparent good reasons why that is so. One being the small size of the site. The general rule of thumb is every 1 acre can yield 10,000 square feet of industrial use. So at best, on a 4.7 acre site, that's about 40,500 square feet of industrial area. And then you have to work that out with geometry. So we're already talking about a very small pool of users that would make that type of investment for such a small yield of space. It's adjacent to residential. We know from our current industrial users that is what they term a risk management risk that's just not worth taking for them. Residential neighbors tend to, reasonably and appropriately often take issue with the types of activities on industrial sites. They're not compatible. So industrial users tend to look for sites that do not have that adjacency. Similarly, we've got 2 schools across the street. And importantly, Hanover Road is the access to those 2 schools, the same as it would be for this site. So industrial users The site selection folks I've talked to, the brokers, the industrial users don't like that attribute. They don't want to be across the street from schools and sharing that kind of traffic volume. We're not along the railroad. It's close. It's just south of the site, but we do not have frontage along the railroad. That potentially could counteract the fact that we don't have easy interstate access, but unfortunately, we just don't quite touch that rail system. Even if we did, we would need a lot of frontage along it. Talking to some industrial users that I work with, they explained that you have to install essentially a third rail beside a railroad to accomplish the loading and unloading, to utilize that railroad, a little spur, if you will, and you have to have a lot of frontage to implement that, which this site doesn't readily have. And then we talked about the poor access to the 8540 interstate corridor. The rule of thumb, again, when you're talking to site selection folks for industrial uses, is 2 miles and 2 turns. So this site does not meet that test of being within 2 turns of the I-8540 interstate corridor. These are, of course, all reasons that we can talk about and speculate about, but we do have some market evidence here. The site next door to the subject parcel was home of Copeland Fabrics or Copeland Mills up until 2018. When they vacated the premises, the property was listed by a very prolific industrial broker, CBRE. They listed the site for over 2 years and did not have any interest from an industrial user. I spoke with the listing agent from CBRE who had that listing and asked him about that data. As we know now, of course, the site has sold, but it sold to a residential developer. They're holding that property now for future use, assumedly. So seemingly, these site selection factors are curbing the eligibility of this site to be a strong candidate for industrial use. Now, balance that against what else we need in a thriving community. We all know right now housing. Of course, we need economic development. Of course, we need employment, and those sites are important. However, if those sites can't be achieved on certain parcels, we certainly don't want to hold that parcel back from contributing in another meaningful way. And I would submit to you that this parcel is a candidate to contribute through housing. The Carolina Core Report, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, has established that we have a shortage of 25,000 homes for the next 5 years in our Triad County region. So this housing crisis, this housing shortage that we all hear about anecdotally from friends or family that we hear about on the news, it's not just anecdotal. It's data supported. It's being put out in the economic development channels and communities. When I spoke with Kevin at the Alamance Chamber, he said we're looking at housing a lot right now. It's another leg of the economic development stool, because we got to have the users to create jobs, but we also have to have places where people want to live. So that the housing crisis is real, and it affects communities. So I would submit to you that this property, while not a candidate for industrial, it is reasonable and in the public interest that it can provide a small dent in our much needed housing stock. So future land use plan designation is just one aspect of your comprehensive plan guidance. You also have objectives, goals and growth objectives for your community. And in that regard, we're meeting several important goals and objectives. So we do have some comprehensive plan consistency in those ways. 5.1.1 for housing variety talks about creating opportunities for all types of housing, for all types of citizens and future citizens to come to Graham and find a house, a residence, a place to live that meets their needs. 3.3.2 for focused development. This is looking at infill and the efficient use of development that makes use of infill properties and available properties within the city's existing framework. Land use patterns, 4.3.1, same type of thing. This is looking to prioritize efficient use of your existing utility infrastructure. That's something that the city spends a lot of money on. So we want to make sure that we're using it where it exists rather than always extending it out further and further and further at great expense. We want to make use of the expense you've already put out there to create these utilities and utilize them where they exist. And then 5.2.1 for diverse neighborhoods. Again, this is looking at creating a vibrant city with neighborhoods that have all types of residents and homes in them so that you create communities with people that, we all can go out and talk with our neighbors and have that experience that's created by these diverse and thriving neighborhoods of people that want to be in a city together and want to be in that part of the community and make it thrive together. So our comprehensive plan guidance, I would suggest, does point us into an analysis that this is a reasonable request and it is in the public interest. So moving forward, as I told you the second prong of that test was going to be reasonableness. So as we move to the next slide, one of the ways we evaluate reasonableness is zoning context. So here's your zoning map. Again, our parcel's in the middle of the screen with the red star. It's got that split zoning on it that you can see better here. And again, the purple is the light industrial, the dark taupe, if you will, is that residential general. And then you see a lot of the lighter orange and some darker orange to the south. Those are all residential districts as well. So as you can guess what I'm getting at here, what you can see is the area is heavily residential. We have a zoning context here that historically has supported and been utilized as residentially. That's not surprising. This area was designated residential in your previous land use plan that predated, I believe, the 2015 plan that you're under now. So I think that this zoning is right in line with that historical land use that had been on the map for quite some time. If we could go to the next slide. Our land use pattern is the next tool that we use to evaluate reasonableness. And this is just looking at, does the use being proposed make sense with what's around it? Zoning is only half of that story. Zoning doesn't necessarily mean that a use is built in that fashion, right? But in this slide, we can see that here, in this part of Graham, the land use pattern pretty much does follow that zoning that we saw. You're seeing a lot of homes in this area, all types. I see single family, manufactured homes. There's some multifamily there to the east and the south. And then you see the two schools on the other side of the road. That's Cummings High School and I believe Brookview Middle School. So we've got the two schools in the area too, which of course contribute and are an important factor to any neighborhood's land use pattern. We could go to, we also have a church across the street. Forgive me, I forgot to mention that, right across Jeffries. So if we could go to the next slide. Of course, it's reasonable to ask, well, what would happen, what could happen today without any rezoning, without any public hearings or special permissions to change? So we need to look at that as well. It's got RG zoning and I-1 zoning. That RG district, it's probably a little over half the site. But if we assume that it's half the site, 2.7 acres, 2.3 acres, do that mathematically for what's allowed in the residential general district, you could ask for permission. We could turn in a site plan tomorrow for 61 multifamily apartments. So again, that has to, of course, be go through the development process. So, you probably don't get the pure density that the math yields, but the point is that that's allowed today without any public hearings or changes or special requests or commitments or restrictions. That would be with a 25-foot buffer and a 25-foot setback, which is exactly what we're going to look at for the proposed use. On the I-1 district, some types of uses that could go there: auto body repair shop, a metal fabricator, bottling plant, food processing. Again, of course, that would have to meet other development standards, but these are the types of uses that these zoning districts allow. So if we could go to the next slide, this is moving us into the, is it in the public interest part of our analysis? And I would submit to you that your conditional rezoning process, specifically conditional residential as we're using it here, is how we ensure that a proposal is in the public interest. Because what that process does by nature is specify, customize, and curtail a proposal so that it has all the right restrictions and commitments and enhancements to ensure that a proposal is in the public interest. Meaning it's not just what's allowed by right under the ordinance. Rather, it's caveated and nuanced to take into account all the iniquities of the site and all the sensitivities of the neighbors and surrounding area and the community at large. So that is why I mentioned earlier, we didn't just look to balance the site out by taking it all to residential general. Instead, we asked for a total rezoning of the entire 4.7 acres to go under this conditional format that does, of course, require a site plan commitment. So this is a binding site plan that goes through your TRC process, and if approved, we're required to uphold to this site plan. So it is a framework of transparency and commitment that you all can rely upon and the community and neighbors can rely upon. You don't get that with RG zoning and you don't get that with I-1 zoning. So this is what went through TRC. I'm a very visual person, and this for me is not super digestible as we want to look at, the intricate aspects of this site plan. So let's go to the next slide. There we go. And this is better suited for us to talk about. What I would suggest to you are all the exceptional qualities and aspects of the proposal before you. So this shows you what's being presented tonight, what is being asked for. It's a conditional residential request. So it's a site plan commitment. That means that this is the only thing we can do. It's not any of those other residential uses that would be allowed under RG. It's none of the I-1 uses. It's a maximum of 41 townhomes. Townhomes is the only residential format here that would be allowed under this plan, and there's 41 of them. We're proposing parking in excess of what your ordinance requires. We do that by providing 3 spaces per home instead of 2. We are providing internal sidewalks, internal to the project, as well as project frontage sidewalks along Jeffrey Street and Hanover Road. We're providing enhanced buffering along the perimeter. We're providing privacy fences to our, on-property residential neighbors that expressed a desire for that. We're providing open space. The ordinance doesn't require that we do that at just 4.7 acres, but we are, and we're committing to that through this site plan process. That open space will have play areas, intentional gathering spots with benches and seating, fire pits, these types of things that create community and provide opportunities for folks who want to have that, at-home community experience that I think a lot of us look for. It's got on-site stormwater management. Importantly, this project provides infrastructure planning for public road connection to our landlocked neighbors to the east of our property. That's important. This is something we heard about during my clients' talks with our neighbors and folks who utilize the process and the rezoning forum to come out and let us know what their interests were and what their concerns were. So you see here, I want to explain how we're doing that, because it's important, I think, that a proposal and a property speaks to future planning and how we're improving a community and leaving it better than how we found it, and how we're ensuring that other properties in the area can also grow and expand over time per their wishes. So you see there at the southern tip of the property, it's the far right-hand side. As we view this, you see what looks like a T turnaround. And I want to mention these are public roads. Townhome communities can be private, but we wanted to do public because it's better for fire access, it's a better spacing, and because it furthers future connections like I'm about to talk about. So in the short term, this property is asking to develop, our neighbors are not. So all we can do is plan for our own subject property. Of course, I can't stand up here and make commitments and assertions for other property owners. Or I can't get up here and say, hey, the city should do this. But what we can do is ensure that we put our building block in place so that we create that incremental progress, that if and when the city wants to come to finish the road, or if and when our neighboring properties develop, we won't be the problem that prohibits this connectivity. So right now there is an easement that goes across this part of our property. It provides access to some landlocked properties to our east. I believe it used to actually be a road, Hughes Road or Hughes Street. For whatever reason, it is not now. But we recognize that that should be planned for, and we should ensure that we're making sure we don't prohibit that connectivity in the future. So that little T turnaround that you see at the end of our property, we have a note on our previous plan where all the busy lines and notes and project requirements are listed. One of those notes and requirements is listed that this is a variable right-of-way intended for future public dedication. And that's because we understand that as the properties around us develop, we need to be prepared to be a part of that road network. So for now, it's just a T turnaround to accommodate emergency turnarounds, mail turnarounds, trash trucks, that sort of thing. But it is set up there to connect when the time comes. Right now, we have stopped it short of the property line because we got a lot of feedback. It was very important to our neighbors that this site have a healthy perimeter buffer. So we wanted to provide that. So that's why we have stopped it short now in favor of the buffer. But our commitment through our TRC planning, and I'm making it here on record before you tonight, is that when you're ready to build the rest of that road, or our future neighbors are ready to do so, we'll extend that road at our own dime to our property edges, so that our part of the puzzle is there. And we're not derailing those future efforts. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Again, just to remind you, we're talking about whether or not the proposal is in the public interest. So of course, a large part of that is public comment, what we've heard from that public and what their interests are, and how we can balance that with the interests of the property owner and the proposed developer. So we heard a lot about that at Planning Board, and so here you see Mr. Holland went through this quickly during his staff report, but I wanted to take a minute and go through each of the modifications and changes that we've done since Planning Board. That's why we asked for a continuance at your November meeting, so we could have this fully prepared and vetted, and have it sent through planning with our engineers and so forth to make sure that it all checked out, which it does. So we're pleased tonight to be able to answer the feedback we heard at Planning Board. We've reduced the project by over 22% in terms of yield. We're down to 41 townhomes. It used to be 53. Previously, we had 5 guest spaces. Remember, we were already exceeding the parking requirements for individual units, but now we've also added additional guest parking. We've also relocated that guest parking more central to the community. It used to be down at the end off of that T turnaround. So we relocated it to be more centrally available so more guests would actually use it, and to accommodate the fact that we understand that T turnaround will need to turn into public right-of-way someday, and we don't want to have parking coming off of it. We had a type D planting yard at 10 feet previously at Planning Board's iteration. Now we're showing a type C planting yard at 25 feet. Previously, we had not proposed any privacy fencing. Now we are. We heard from almost all of our residential neighbors, some of whom I imagine are here tonight. Mr. Stallings, Ms. Tier, Mr. Holmes, property representatives from the Murphy Moody ownership, that they were concerned about impacts of new neighbors behind them, and what that would feel and sound like. So in addition to that additional planting and width that certainly speaks to those concerns, we also have added a privacy fence. Active open space in our previous plan, again, this is not required, so we were already exceeding the ordinance by providing it at even 5,000 square feet, but now we've increased that to 11,000 square feet. We've also removed the dog park as one of the programming aspects in that active open space. We heard some concerns about that from one of our neighbors, so we got rid of that. Certainly there are other amenities that folks can enjoy and that provide those recreational opportunities. So our active open space now contemplates playground, play area, that intentional gathering, seating, fire pit, that sort of thing. And then, of course, I've already elaborated upon, but previously we had that T turnaround terminus at the end of the street, really just for that reason, to be a turnaround for vehicles entering and exiting the site. But now we have, in talking with our neighbors, we understand that it really needs to be it needs to be incremental progress to a future public road that will probably go here. So we've made arrangements for that and made that commitment. So again, this is a direct call and response, and ensuring that we're meeting that public interest, and ensuring that we're presenting what we believe to be the best foot forward for a plan that not only meets the goals and aspirations of the property owner and the developer, but also the neighbors and those who are already in the community. We heard overwhelmingly at Planning Board, these are residential neighbors that live here, enjoy living here, want to keep living here. A lot of them, their families have been there for, I think I heard, 100 years. So overwhelmingly, we heard that this is a residential area. A residential use here isn't a bad idea, but it needs to be balanced. It needs to be curtailed and customized so that these considerations are carefully preserved and implemented. And based on that feedback, and the planning board's very careful and deliberate, walking through of those items, I'm sure you watched that video or saw the minutes. We got great feedback, and we're able to, I think, implement those items. So just to summarize here at the next slide, again, we've talked about all these aspects, all these features in the vein of, does this meet your statutory analysis when you evaluate a rezoning? Again, that analysis is the comprehensive plan guidance, and then being able to come to a conclusion that your decision is reasonable and in the public interest. So I would submit to you that for all the reasons I've just been through, this plan does do that and would yield a result for you all where you would be able to propose this plan with that statement that it's reasonable and in the public interest because it's contextually appropriate, both for zoning and land use. It's a better alternative, I believe. I would opine than the existing zoning would be. And it's in the public interest because of the curtailments, restrictions, and enhancements that we've applied through consultation with staff and through the feedback of the community. So we hope and believe that the plan you see before you tonight is that balanced approach that checks those boxes and indeed creates a plan that's the highest and best use for everyone. Again, thriving, growing city like Graham, it needs everything. It needs employment, it needs industrial users, it needs economic development, and it needs housing. So I think that this site, when carefully approached with intentionality, like we have done here, implementing the feedback of staff and our neighbors, that this site can be a great candidate for housing. And I hope you'll agree that, if approved, I think this whole process and project can really be a success story in two regards for Graham. One, your conditional rezoning procedures and process. That whole platform allows for this customization and highly specified type of proposal that ensures these types of curtailments and excesses are placed and met in the right places because all sites are different. So we want to get it right, and the conditional site plan platform allows us to do that. Also, the public process, the public hearing process, ensuring that the notices go out, the feedback comes in, and when a developer and applicant is responsive to that and is able to come back with a plan that we hope our neighbors will agree is better in the ways that they asked us to make it better. That is that public process at work. And that's a success story, I think, when that is the outcome. So again, I have Sam Nye here, our civil design engineer, with any technical questions. We've got Brennan and David here, longtime Alamance County residents themselves, who have certainly close to home interests for wanting to contribute to this community in a meaningful way. And I'm here as well for any future questions. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Bowman.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, just wondered a couple of things that I was wondering about, some of which are not, as I understand it, technically required, but I wonder if the developer or his representative could comment on them. That's the size, as in square footage, of the future townhomes, in the exterior features that are planned, the target market, and I'm assuming, but want to confirm, they're 2 stories.
If you want to, ma'am, that's up to you.
Yes, if it pleases the council, we're happy to answer that. I don't include that information since it's, not part of the legal purview, but I'm always happy to answer questions. They are 2-story. The square footage, I believe, is what, 14 to 1,500 square feet. Certainly these are homes that we hope to be, in that ever diminishing sweet spot where attainable, folks who live in the community, who want to live here, continue to live here. So, I think the modern farmhouse that type of aesthetic that is provided for illustrative purposes in your packet, that's the thinking here. 1-car garage in each unit, again, just trying to hit all the aspects. Actually, one of the members of our team is a residential realtor, so he's on the ground every day hearing what buyers are looking for. So that's what this product is designed, that's what this community is designed to deliver. That size and attributes of housing that are so hard to find.
Sorry, what's the target pricing for these things? Curious.
I think that's always a function of working backwards, but, if it could be anywhere between 265, into the low threes, but, ideally, not trying to create something here that is, is out of keeping with what we are seeing the need for, well-positioned buyers in Alamance County.
Okay.
Market-driven, I guess, is how we describe that in the residential real estate industry.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward.
I live very near to this area, just around the corner,
Keith,
and this is
Keith.
exactly what.
Can you state your name, please,
Keith Westbrook, I'm sorry,
and your address, just for,
604 Trockwater Court,
I mean,
Grant.
we know who you are, but
I know,
we did.
I know you. We talk about infill, this area here, I don't ever foresee any kind of industrial going over there. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think this is the perfect project for this area right here. That's all I got to say about it.
Good. Anyone else would like to speak? Please step forward.
My name is Steve Moser and live right at the corner of the property. I've been against it the whole time, but I know progress is coming and it's got to be accepted by the surrounding community. We got trailer parks all the way down. I've got a trailer there. I've got junk. I've got a wood stove that completely blocked that back area with smoke coming out. And one of my biggest concerns, you get a townhouse in there selling for 265, 325. They don't sell. What happens then? Is it rented? Is it low income? What happens? Okay, you got another road down at the actually on my property where they're talking about a public road going in, which would be an ideal situation to do a turnaround. Just buy the whole property up there, make phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. Apparently, they not interested in that. With what's there, I have serious doubts that you can sell something 265, 300, whatever, 1,400 square feet. That's basically a big trailer. You've got access with the fire department. You got access with the trash as far as a turnaround. I don't know how that's going to happen there when people park their cars on the road too. It's a lot of ifs. I'm not saying no, not saying yes, but it's just a lot of stuff that hasn't been addressed. They've been trying to get an easement from me. That's not working out right now. Nor I don't know if it will or not. They may get it from somebody else, but right now I think it needs to be a lot more consideration from you guys, a lot more detail done, a lot more addressing the neighbors and their issues for what's there. You've got nice townhouses. Miss Cheeva's got a beautiful house. It's old houses, trailers, 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 trailers. So it's different aspects of the whole situation that could aesthetically make the neighborhood a better place. But to chop it up like that, I just don't think that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who else would like to speak, please? Please step forward. Don't be shy. We won't bite you, I promise you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just raise this question and I'll let your attorney or one of y'all, somebody address. I see Mr. Talley stepping forward. Obviously, the mayor has recused herself because, as I understand it, the couple jointly own property, as she described it, in the neighborhood. wonder if the attorney could comment on whether it's appropriate for the other property owner to speak on this when the mayor herself is not.
Turn your-
Speaking to you, Mike.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Brian and I discussed this, and we don't know of any problem, with, Mr. Talley speaking, even though the mayor had been recused. The statute speaks in terms of the sitting member on the council. And Mayor Talley has been recused, but there's nothing that says that the husband or spouse or anybody else who had an interest could not speak, on this issue. And that's probably the sum total of it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Talley, you want to speak?
Hello, my name's Chuck Talley. I live at 808 Sideview Street here in Graham. I'm also the property owner of 1019 Jeffrey Street and 1007 Jeffrey Street. 1019 is a landlocked piece of zoned light industrial, and a small portion is zoned residential. I have 4 people that live on the land that's landlocked. So I'm speaking on behalf of them also tonight because I've discussed it with them. So this rezoning is not consistent with the 2035 comprehensive plan. City council needs to ensure that the proposed zoning is harmonious with the neighborhood. Goal 2.4 industrial strategy. 2.4.2 remote industrial redevelopment of existing dwellings and infrastructure. The property has not been on the market until September the 25th of 2019. 2021, when the Copelands actually sold the property to the people in Raleigh. I'm talking about the Copeland property, which is industrial. And so it's actually on loop right now for $60,000 acre, and I think they purchased around 238. So it hasn't really been tried that long yet anyway. All right. Also, in the 2035 plan, it says that the front of the home should not all be driveway, but be because the development is so dense, the entire front of the yard is pretty much nothing but concrete in this development. The suburban residential calls for a predominantly detached single-family homes, multifamilies to be less than 12 units. This is far exceeds that with the 41. I do think there's a problem with the traffic issue, and also there's a problem where I did meet with the family, and I would love to see this work out to an extent, but it's not fair to the rest of the residents over there that are like opposed to it. There are some of them are sitting here, not that'll get up and talk tonight. I think that it's not fair if there's some perk in it for me, and currently right now as it exists, it doesn't. I tried to be open about this because I'm a developer and I'm really good friends with the Lennons and also with David. The Whites. I actually met with David, and I got much respect for the family. I've been on both sides of this before. I've been on the winning and losing side. I feel like losing more than the winning. And I feel like that they have great intentions to do this and make this a lot better, but the scarcity of it and what makes everybody scared is how condensed it is and what's going to come from it and how it's going to affect the housing around it. And with me, I don't ever see changing my land from industrial because that's where I store my equipment and things like that, because I can have outside storage of light industrial. So I don't know what I would do other than leave an industrial anyway. And I do have over 900 foot of land on the railroad tracks that I think that possibly down the road, if somebody was to buy the other from LoopNet, I would probably consider on selling if it would create jobs for the city. But currently right now, I have nowhere to go with what I've got other than that. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward. Let your views be heard.
I'm Billy Stallings. I live at 213 East Hanover Road. After talking to David or Mr. Wyatt, I told him my concern was the complex that's basically in my front yard to my backyard. And I wouldn't have any privacy. I know he's put up privacy fences and trees, and that would be great. And other than that, I have no objection. Nobody really wants to see it, developed, but times change, and so I think that's a little steep price for this area. I think, yeah, if my house ain't quite that big, but I don't know. This is, new to me. I don't like public speaking. So, you know, you guys forgive me. David and his son, they've been very, very generous, you know, they've asked, you know, they've met what we've asked, but I still think 40 townhomes on that is still too many. I don't know how many of you guys would like 20 or 25 new neighbors at one time when you lived there 32 years and haven't had a neighbor. So, you know, we did fight the Copelands over the cell phone tower. They wanted to put it 50 or 100 foot off my property and Mr. Lennon's property. And we fought that, and city council, that was the Copelands, and Jason Copeland came to my house in a threatening manner, and basically he was run off with a threat to go get my gun. David's been to my house and no problems at all. He's been a very nice gentleman. I just don't think this fits the area, but that's up to you guys. Appreciate your time. That's all I can say. I don't know.
No, ma'am. We need you to come up here.
They can take her the microphone.
Okay. Hold on, ma'am.
Can we,
That was the problem, Mrs. Weir.
Here you go. I live at the corner of Jefferson, Hanover, and I want to say these guys have put up every effort to please us. I don't think somebody, 2 or 3 people ought to be able to determine what somebody can put on their property. They could have sold the property to somebody that wanted to put a trailer park, or it could go commercial. Maybe somebody wants to put a bunch of rundown transfer trucks out there, or whatever. They have visited us, they have talked to us, they have listened, they have tried their best, they've made adjustments, and I'm all for it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can you state your name? I'm Peggy Tier, 201 East Hanover Road, it's the corner of Jefferson, Hanover. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that'd like to speak before we close the public hearing? Yes.
Yeah, my name is Jerry Lennons, live at 223 Bank Street here in Graham. This property, my wife inherited from her father when he passed away some years ago. The property had been on the market. He had put the property on the market, been on the market for some time. We had no bites at all, no interest in it at all. And I think at that time, maybe it was all residential. I'm not sure. It's been some years ago. But the only thing I would say to you, this property is going to be developed at some point in time. Now, if it's light industrial, what in the world could you put on there that's light industrial that would be better than 41 town units? Not only for that community, but for the city of Burlington. I mean, for the city of Graham. I'm sorry. So what I would keep it in mind, it will be developed. You want to see a garage? Or do you want to see 41 townhomes? It's going to be beneficial to the community, and it's already been talked about. Trailer parks, trailers, individual. Some of these people may want to upgrade, who knows? Maybe they'd be interested in one of these units. We don't want to put more trailer in that area. Don't need it. It needs to be developed in some manner. In these units, it will be beneficial not only to the community, but city of Graham tax base also. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? Step back up here, sir.
Again, my name is Billy Stallings, 213 East Hanover Road. One thing that I've heard over and over is, there's schools across the street. Well, they're in Burlington and we're in Graham. So these kids would be going to Graham and nobody wants to go to Graham. Okay, I told the planning board that. Nobody wants to go to Graham. The former mayor, he made a fool out of himself going to the school board saying y'all gotta do something, when he was the one in charge of okaying the residential areas, the low income, whatever. They're okaying, y'all okaying everything. You ride anywhere in Graham, there's a project going on. Anywhere, on Hanover Road, everywhere. And if y'all gonna overcrowd the schools, it's gonna make my taxes and everybody else's taxes go up. But you gotta know which city you're in if you're gonna plan something. If you're planning something for Graham, they gotta go to Graham. If you're planning something for Burlington, they can go to Broadview and Commons, but that ain't the way it works. But, the schools are overcrowded, or are y'all gonna keep continuing to okay all the developments? We need jobs around here.
I will say this,
Yes, sir.
what you're saying about the school system. The school system is, we have no control of the school system.
Yes, sir.
We've got to do what is right for Graham. So,
No, I'm saying that the mayor went to the school board
right.
blaming them, saying they have to do something. They're not the ones overcrowding the cities. Do you understand what I'm saying? You don't want to? Okay, I understand.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward. We promise you we won't butch you. Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate that commentary and everybody who's now come to 2 public meetings to talk about this. So again, we always like to see that public process at work. Just want to address a couple things. We heard some discussion, some speculation and opinions about the pricing and whether or not that is realistic or what will happen with that. And that's why it's really so dangerous, to talk about economics and home prices in a zoning context. But what I will say is that a rising tide lifts all ships. And at some point, you have to have a catalyst if you want to invest in a community and create something that everybody wants to be a part of. So I think that you have a developer here that's in town, that's going to continue to be in this community, who has said, yes, I raise my hand, I'm willing to do that, and wants to invest in this community. Pricing is not something that you start at day one and then you build your project around it. Instead, you see a piece of property and you see what would work for that community, if you can deliver it, and then you try and go get that done in the best way possible. So I think that we need to be careful to focus on the land use, how it fits, how it's compatible, what it does for the city of Graham, and then focus on the fact that in this case, of course, that proposed land use is an investment in an area that I think a lot of people we've heard from are looking forward to. These people live here, they want to stay here. This is exactly the type of thing that could allow somebody else to feel like, okay, I'm going to reinvest in my house, or maybe it's time for me to redevelop my home or something of that nature. So, we've got residential developers out of Raleigh, Clay Pigeon, that own the property next door. This is the type of catalyst that could cause them to start their project. So I think that investment in an area is a good thing, not a bad thing. We also heard that there's, more consideration or planning that needs to be done. But of course, I want to always remind you, I tell you this every time I'm here with you, zoning is permission to try. It's a district permissive threshold. So what that means is, yeah, there's still things that have to be engineered and done. You heard about an easement. Mr. Mosier is one person that my clients have spoken to, but there are several others. So that's a thing that has to happen, the same as a driveway permit. It's just part of the site planning process. And if it doesn't work out, then something else would have to be tried. So again, zoning doesn't mean this is ready to go vertical tomorrow. It means we're ready to move forward to finalize all those other details. There's some comment from one of our neighbors, that he would love to keep his property industrial. And that's fine. I want to point out that this project doesn't preclude any property owner from doing that. In fact, I think that this project would further that goal because you can't develop that property industrially without access to a public road. So, in other words, you can't do that on a private easement. So again, looking to create building blocks, looking to create progress on the aspects that we can control to leave our neighbors in better positions and to, meet those concerns, those valid concerns that they've laid out to us as stakeholders. So I'm happy to answer any other comments that I may not have addressed, but those were the things I jotted down.
I have one. You talking about the easement, what is the easement for? Is it for water, sewer?
Sewer, yes, sir.
So do you have water on the property now?
Water is more readily available. It's in Hanover Road, yeah, so it's out the front.
Okay, so sewer, you're looking for an easement for sewer, so you haven't obtained that yet, okay.
Right. And that's normal, I would point out, because of course you wouldn't go put a sewer easement on record if you don't even have your zoning, because now we've clogged up those people's title. And, if the project doesn't move forward, they don't want that on their title. So this is the normal order of operations.
Are there any other questions for this, for her, before we close the public hearing?
Oh, wait, you got one other person back here who wants to
Yes,
talk.
sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Thompson. I'm the representative of the heirs of 1001 Jefferson Street, who's been there about 125, 30 years. Peggy, good to see you. Jerry, how you doing, man? Okay, the bottom line, I think it's a great project. I just think it's incomplete, and I've talked to them. I think if you're really going and serious about developing that area, you should go all the way and buy our property and Chuck's property and all that property, and then develop a really nice place. I really feel the $230 or $65,000 in a blighted area as it stands now, that's a bad investment. And I've told them that, but I think the project is great. We've been waiting there for years to develop Hughes Street. Yeah, 150 years, my family's been in that property. We have about 4 or 5 acres there. So I congratulate you. I applaud you what you're doing. I just think it's just not enough. I just think that if you really want to make Graham, which is, by the way, your decoration is gorgeous. If you really want to make Graham a place to be and people to come in and spend that kind of money, you really should look at the entire area, the whole plot of the area. So thank you for your time and thank you for your attention. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Chuck.
I would ask that if they have not got their utilities in place yet, which is a key item for this, I understand the purpose of rezoning. I think it should be pushed back before the planning and zoning board so we can iron all these details and stuff. I don't know why it didn't go back before the planning and zoning board since they turned it down anyway and it comes straight to you guys. I think until they get their right of ways in place, I don't see the purpose in passing this anyway. I personally think getting the right of ways and actually putting Hughes Street back in, I only win from, and that's what I tried to explain. But if they can't buy the land, then what is out there anyway? I mean, can they move forward a project that's gonna be dead in the water anyway? That's the only thing I'm bringing before you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to address the procedural question that was raised, this didn't go back to the planning board. We communicated with staff about that. They could have sent us that route had they wanted to, but the reason it wasn't is because everything that was done was discussed and directed by the planning board. So if you watch that video, read those minutes, their discussion, it was lengthy and it was deliberate and it was very much appreciated because it was directing what modifications they felt like needed to be made in order for you guys to see the plan. So, that's exactly what we've brought forward. It's always interesting, I think, when people discuss a project in terms of, well, why don't they go ahead and do this property and that property? And, I get it. We all look at the whole big picture and sometimes that would be nice. It would be great if we were, just on the computer and could just grab all the property and, build it up. But unfortunately, we don't control every bit of the chessboard all at once. However, when you get a project going, again, a catalyst, create that investment, that will trigger other things. So if this project can get off the ground, then maybe that's what allows my clients or the developers next door to approach Mr. Thompson or Mr. Talley and knock on their door and say, hey, we'd like to do more of this. It's gone great here. It's been a great benefit to this community. We want to do more. Here's an offer. So I think that those things can happen, but it's not a reasonable expectation to think that they have to happen with one proposal. Again, these sellers put their property in play, and that's what started all this. So we have to kind of honor that market-driven process.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else before I close the public hearing? Seeing no one else is stepping forward, I will entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
Mayor Pro Tem, I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
I second your motion, Bonnie. All in favor?
Aye.
Can hear your thoughts.
I think the project's a good idea, but what Mr. Thomas said about need to look at that whole area. You're, on the one hand, it's a good project. I mean, in regards to upping and improving that area. But you've got the uncertainty of, as Mr. Thomas said, you got the property, I guess, would be, I'm trying to get the orientation of Hanover and the property to the east that's been, it was mentioned that it's been acquired, and there's discussion that it's going to be resident, whoever has acquired it plans to develop it residential. So a comment was made that somebody has bought that land and it's their intention to come and zone it residential. I mean,
So
Are you referring
they're
to the
using
Clay
it as
Vision
industrial?
properties?
Is that what you're saying?
because right now it's zoned industrial.
Right.
But the statement was made that that land has been acquired and whoever acquired it has stated they were going to make it residential.
Are you talking about the Clay Pigeon properties that was,
I thought that was still for sale.
okay. Was Clay Pigeon a residential developer? That's what you refer
Okay.
to? Even though it's zoned industrial, it was purchased by.
I mean, that's the thing. You look at that, you look at the map and all that white that's shown there is zoned industrial.
Mhm.
And what is being proposed is almost, it's an ink spot on the border. And Graham is challenged with not having enough property to be developed industrially, for small industries and such, because we do need one of my concerns since I've been on the council is I did not want Graham to become a bedroom community. Because when that happens, then the revenue is dependent upon property tax.
Mm.
And many of our residents live on fixed income. And if we fall into that spiral of having to depend upon property tax, then those folks who are living on fixed income will have to leave. And I do not want to I do not want to see that happen.
And so when you look at that, the location with the railroad tracks there, with Mebane developing a transshipment point, what's to stop someone thinking about doing that right there? Where bring a railroad spur in, but I'm just saying, we're challenged with having land that we can develop and put businesses on. I was at chamber meeting a couple of weeks ago, and a common question was, how come we don't have, additional grocery stores here in Graham? And the problem is land. You got to have a piece of land large enough that you can put a parking lot to accommodate the size grocery store that we would like to see in our community. Otherwise, you're talking about somebody coming in and knocking down existing, property to convert it. And so on the one hand, I appreciate what you're recommending. I wish you could take, as Mr. Thomas says, either thinking to have the vision to just speculate of what could be done if you had all that land, where I'm sure there are investors who would be interested if you had a proposal that addressed that. Because right now you're looking at, you're the sole investor versus that is a visionary project. And Mr. Thomas nailed it. Think of the full picture of what you're looking at, and then think about the property between Jeffries and Pomeroy. Because that's what you're talking about, incremental development. But if you have a vision for all that, I think we on the council would buy into it, would support it, because it's moving Graham forward. So I like your project, but I wish there was a phase 2, phase 3 that says, okay, this is the other things that would come with it, would, just my thoughts.
Well, they don't own the property though. They don't own all that
I know,
property.
but I'm just saying. Somebody's got to have the vision for it and then find the folks who would support it and invest in it.
You got any comments, Bonnie?
I mean, that is a lot of industrial area there that we're talking about. Seems to me, I do have concerns too about the schools and the infrastructure and everything else. And if we just keep, putting in more and more and more places to live, like Councilman Chin said, we're going to end up, like you said, a bedroom community. We're going to have too much of that. And we know what happens when that happens. Property taxes go up on everybody, because as we give up industrial space, that's what happens. And there's a lot of businesses, I think, that are interested in coming to Graham. And if we keep, giving up all the industrial zoned areas, they're not going to have anywhere to go. I think it's a really nice project. I do have concerns about the pricing in that area. I think, and I understand what you're saying about somebody's got to step up and try to pick an area up. I don't know that you'd get that, but that's not my concern, but I'm not sure you'd ever get that for that area. But that doesn't really have anything to do with the zoning though, but that's just a comment that I have. But yeah, I just think we need to be mindful of giving up, so much land for just housing residential. So that's all I have.
I don't have anything.
My biggest concern, that they could turn around tomorrow and come back and apply and put apartments out there. And that's where we really don't want to go.
That is true.
The price point that they're asking or proposing to ask is in line with what houses are selling for. When you get houses in our subdivision that are selling for $300,000 or $400,000 and they're used. And you got the townhouses over here behind Sheets and they're on Main Street in that new subdivision. They were selling for $300,000. So the pricing is not out of the ballpark. Sometimes it takes a baby step to bring an area out of blight. As for the school systems, no matter whether we approve it or not, the school system is already overburdened. And whether the city of Graham adds to that burden, you got city of Mebane, city of Burlington, city of Elon, town of Ossipee, town of Hall River, town of Green Level, and the village of Alamance doing development, already adding to the burden. So that doesn't hold water. I worked for the county for 15 years. And that's the one thing we've always heard, new development, you're adding burden to the school system. We as the city of Graham, we can't control the system. We can't control where kids go and do not go. For if we lose the industrial property, which I really don't see this as a valuable piece of industrial property. It could end up with, if you go back up Hannaford, right there where Graham Hotel is, we could end up with another trash dump where they're parking all these trucks. And we really don't want that. So, I'm sort of torn between the two.
I'll make a suggestion. Have y'all considered approaching the owners of the property along Jeffries going down toward the track, saying to acquire their land, in exchange, they get one of the units in the development?
Thank you for the opportunity to address that. So by having this conversation now in this forum, so that's an economic transaction, right? A negotiation and a meeting of the minds that has to happen between a willing seller and a willing buyer. Those types of negotiations don't come together or come to fruition for a lot of reasons all the time. The conversations we have had thus far have not led us to believe that those are going to be viable contracts anytime soon. And now the way that this discussion is going, what has happened is, this conversation is putting an option on those properties for those owners for this use to tie this property's evolution to its highest and best use to them. So it's going to artificially diminish this property because now it's been said that it has to go hand in hand with theirs. So now we just got farther apart in those negotiations. So, there's a reason we don't, talk about other properties outside the subject property in rezoning hearings. We put together a project that is what we could control and talk about now today. Certainly that can lead to future things. It often does. You're not wrong about that. But, to try and put that together inside a public hearing,
No,
is difficult.
I'm just saying, Mr. Thomas brought up, in my mind, his comment about thinking of a vision. You talked about bringing, improvements to Graham.
Right.
And when you look at those properties that are right now, they're residential, RG and such. I mean, instead of thinking small, think big. I mean, think of, you would be setting a trend if you would think about if you had all that land and your project was the first piece of it. And that you would incorporate small town center with some shopping and things like that. I mean,
So if,
think outside of just developing a residential neighborhood. 'Cause that's what you're proposing.
So if I may, I think what you're proposing is more along the lines of long-range, small area planning that, a city's planning staff would typically do. And
Yeah,
you're
but
describing
sometimes I look at it this way.
area
you
come
know,
together,
you-
but we can only control the subject property that has authorized us to come and ask for this. So
But I'm just,
that's the
I'm
difference.
just asking, to give it thought
And
and, it's one of those things you sit around the table with fellow developers and you talking about, because what we're seeing is we're doing things piecemeal. I got a piece of property, I want to put 12 homes on it. I got a piece of property, I want to put a strip mall here versus we've got a big piece of property. You got a piece of it. You have and it becomes one of those things, negotiating a win-win where those who live in the area that you're acquiring, offer them something besides just buying, hey, here's money versus saying, all right, you're living in a double wide trailer. How about moving up and you'll live in something different.
I understand what you're
I'm
saying. I
just
appreciate your
just saying-
comments. I just think, to now tie one property owner's fate to its neighbor and diminish and impair this property owner's abilities and future because of what their neighbor may or may not agree to do in an economic contest outside of this is problematic for the property owner that actually has come to the table and wants to contribute something
Yeah,
to the
but
fabric.
again, it's not one of those I win, you lose. I mean, that's unfortunately seems to be our model. I win, you lose versus why not we both win?
But what I'm saying is now this property loses because now its fate is now tied to other property owners who now, have been told that their property holds the key to this property's future. So, we're tying this property's fate to other people who haven't put themselves in the forum.
Amanda, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Concerning the sewer easement, what happens, just say if we rezone this and approve your rezoning request, and then you can't get an easement? I mean, that kind of puts us in a very awkward position. Now we have a piece of property that's zoned that is not going to be developed. And we are lacking in industrial. Not, you have a good project, but what happens if you don't get these easements?
So
Then it's good.
I can answer that one. Basically, if this the council has the right to rezone it back to whatever they want to. So, you have the zoning in place for conditional based on the parameters that are set. If, progress isn't made, then council has the ability to rezone it to something else.
Right, and an industrial user would also need a sewer easement, so that's, any user that comes to this property is gonna have to figure that out, and, obviously, if my folks have closed on the property and they're sitting there with carrying costs and an industrial user comes to the table, then, yeah, we'd come back and revisit it, because the site plan has a note that it's contingent on, obviously having sewer. And by the way, that note's redundant, your ordinance requires that anyway, we're just acknowledging it.
Could you do me a favor? How much of the acreage, you said it's 4.7?
7.
How much of the acreage is the industrial park?
Sammy, do you have an idea?
What's
It
the-
looks like
what's the
about
breakdown?
half to
That's
me.
what I was thinking
It's
about, half, right?
Yeah. So
Because it's hard to tell because it's kind of an odd shape, but I mean, I was
Right.
thinking it was half,
it
about
looks
half.
like about half, which is why
Just a
that was
couple of acres.
the math I used earlier, and all these industrial uses we're talking about would have to get to the roads. I imagine would need some sort of entitlement to touch that residential area. So I think you should ask yourself, how are you going to feel if there's a request before you asking to change the brown area to purple? And you have all these comments and folks here, talking about that proposal.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, can I ask a both technical and substantive question on one of the points that you raised in your comments?
Mayor, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, the public hearing has been closed, so if you would like to continue to receive public comment, I would ask that you reopen the public hearing.
And it's not a comment, it's a question, but however you want to.
I'm sorry, question or comment.
You guys want to reopen the public hearing? I need a motion.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you stated, if I understood you correctly, that the possibility was that tomorrow they could come back in and ask for an apartment for this property. As I understood the request that's pending and is binding, as I understood it, it has to follow this exact layout.
That's if
Did we-
you approve it.
If you approve it, yes, but it would be absolutely entitled to that. Was that, was you?
It's already, it's.
Again, I'm sorry, if y'all are going to do this question or comment or any kind of public whatever from the audience, could you please just reopen the public hearing or not have it? Either way is fine with me.
I make a motion, we reopen this. I'm sorry, Mr. Bonner. I'll entertain a motion, guys.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'd like to make a motion. I move to deny the rezoning of 4.7 acres located off Hanover Road and Jeffrey Street from I-1 Light Industrial and RG General Residential to CR Conditional Residential to construct 41 townhomes, and that it would not be consistent with policies 5.1.1, 3.3.2, and strategy 4.3.1 as put forth by the Graham 2035 comprehensive plan, and the plan itself does not meet the industrial warehousing requirement of the future land use plan.
I got a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. So it passes, 3 to 1.
Declare that vote.
3 to 1.
Thank you.
All right,
The motion carries, is that?
yes, it carried. I make a motion that we, bring Mayor Talley back in and, we unrecuse her.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. If somebody will step there and bring her back in. Thank you, ma'am. Um, Guys, I ask that we stand in recess for 10 minutes
Okay.
and we come back in 10 minutes. Is that okay?
I'm in favor of that.
Okay.
Pause. All right, let's see if I can get back into my computer. Yeah, that- no, Ray just sent, it. Okay, here it is. Yeah.
Oh, come
I've
on,
already-
man.
Okay,
Ready?
ready to bring me back?
Yep.
Okay. Call the meeting back to order and moving on to the next item. Amendment Development Ordinance Boarding Houses. A public hearing has been scheduled to consider an ordinance amendment to Article 2, Section 10 point. You want to have some feedback?
You need a gavel. Oh, you got one.
10.16, Article 4, Section 10.135, and Article 4, Section 10.149 to add a language to the development ordinance to define and create a use type for boarding houses. I'd like to recognize Assistant City Manager Aaron Holland.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This is one of two ordinance amendments that council had asked staff to look into, and bring forward to address issues where we do not have boarding houses nor short-term rentals in our ordinance currently. The boarding house definition that you see on the screen establishes a length of time and some requirements as to the expectations of what a boarding house is to distinguish it from other type of similar uses. If you see the definition on the screen, a residential establishment which accommodates single room occupancies of unrelated individuals for compensation. Guests are expected to stay on a long-term basis, at least 90 days consecutively, as these establishments cater to people who need temporary or semi-permanent accommodation. Guests may have accesses to a number of communal services, including but not limited to a kitchen, housekeeping, meals, and laundry services. This does not include hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, and short-term rentals. This definition is pretty much a boilerplate definition. You see this in most ordinances when you look at other jurisdictions. So nothing here really is that controversial. But as you mentioned earlier, the planning board did recommend denial. They did want to add more to the definitions to make it stronger, but realize that enforcing it may be a challenge, and therefore recommended denial.
They recommended this be denied,
The boarding house, Yeah.
just the basic definition?
just because they could not make it stronger based on how they saw the boarding houses being enforced in the city. It was going to be a little tougher than what you see on the screen. These are the criteria that go along with the boarding house special use requirements. No signs permitted advertising the boarding house on site. Lighting shall be residential in nature. One resident per 500 square feet of the home. One parking space per bedroom is required, not including on-street parking. All boilerplate criteria that you would see in other jurisdictions. They just want to make it more than the boilerplate.
So they were recommending adding those items?
Right, so what was presented was what you see on the screen. They wanted to add more so that you could register.
They wanted to add this.
They want to add more.
More than this. This is
More than
standard.
this.
This is what we're voting
This is
on.
what we're voting on now.
Right.
They wanted to restrict it even more, is
Correct.
what he's saying, than this.
And we did ask our attorneys on some of the criteria that was presented. I know Cameron had come with some of the criteria. Some of it was just, you needed to have, administrative warrants or something for enforcement of it. It was just taking it to a level probably a little further than we legally can back up.
Bob,
So they want,
y'all dealt with this in Burlington a lot. Do you not have a stricter code in there?
your mic's not on.
Sorry, because we had a problem and, the city attorney there, what they first did was that they looked at the issue broadly. And they said that one of the first things you need to do was do sort of an inventory and see if there were any existing boarding houses. Because if indeed they were already existing, they had to address the issue of nonconformity. If they were legitimate non-conforming uses, they'd be allowed to be used. But nonetheless, it did adopt a boarding house regulation, but it's pretty much agreed that it's not altogether easy to enforce because, you really, it's complaint driven and it's, unless you were willing to go as far as getting administrative, search warrants and going in and see if they comply with the ordinance, you would have some difficulty. And even then, if you were to enforce it, you're limited pretty much to civil remedies and you can't make it a misdemeanor according to Senate Bill 300, which was passed a couple of years ago. But in any event, one of the things, if you do, adopt this tonight, the boarding house would be allowed, I think it's just R7, R9 and residential general is 3. It will be only, it would only be allowed with a special use permit. So you would have some control going in, with respect to any additional conditions you want to make. Of course, it obviously has to be reasonable, but if, again, there could be, well, I don't know.
So anybody wanting to do a boarding house would have to get a special use permit.
Right, that's what was,
If we pass this, right?
correct.
So would they have to meet both the 6 criteria for special use and these other criteria and whatever criteria that we add?
Well, actually, the criteria would be sort of they basically have to meet this and then you overlay the 6 criteria, on top of that. And that is, so.
So just perusing or whatever, Greensboro says tourist homes, these properties must be located, this is in regard to boarding houses. These must be located in buildings originally built as dwellings. Apparently they were putting people in commercial spaces. Do we want to add something about that it has to be
This
in?
just says R9, R7, RG, right? So they couldn't put them in a commercial space, right?
Well,
No, there's some stuff that's grandfathered in that's in those spaces, churches.
well, again, like I said, I'm not familiar with what Greensboro does, but if indeed, of course, you'd have to look at individual circumstances of if there were existing boarding houses. I don't know, are there any boarding houses in Graham that you're aware of, Aaron?
No, I mean, we probably, and I asked Jenny about this, I said, how often do we get calls about boarding houses? Of her time being here, she said she may have received one that would be similar to what a boarding house might be, where you had a bunch of people that were staying. That's not something that we normally receive coming in. Greensboro is a little different, much larger place, college town, where you would, by definition, have boarding houses, because a boarding house is what college kids live in. It's an apartment complex, unrelated, common area. That is a boarding house setup. We don't have that setup challenge here because we don't see the same clientele coming here. to add commercial to this, I think what you have here is more restrictive. I think once you add more, you open it up more. This limits it to certain zones that if anyone desired to come and have a boarding house, you're only gonna be able to have them with a special use in just these zones. So they would have to come to council, meet all the criteria, and then council would then decide whether or not you felt it would qualify to receive the special use or not. I think opening it up, it just makes it a little more challenging versus how we have it here, where we have it more condensed. It fits more of Graham's setup in a much larger town.
And it's like Greensboro's probably got a lot more boarding houses than, I mean, Graham, we don't have that.
I mean, back
Yeah,
to,
but I'm
many,
not
but-
saying we have to be like, I'm just reading like things to consider that they've obviously had more problems with. We don't want to wait till we have a problem and then like,
Yeah,
we
but-
want to prevent it, be proactive, not reactive.
Why do we want to keep adding ordinances in hopes that,
We
well,
already have this,
something should
don't we?
happen?
No, we
Don't-
don't have
don't address
anything.
boarding
That's
house.
what,
Now we
that's why
don't
we're
have
doing
it,
it.
but right now we have ordinances and laws in regards to noise and disturbances and things like that. And if it turns out that has turned their home into a boarding house, but if nobody has complained about it, I just feel that,
This is based off a complaint.
I mean, I would say that
you know,
if somebody,
Like-
if somebody does do it and somebody complains, you have nothing in the ordinance to address it. This would be able to address that they're doing something wrong.
well, if somebody calls and says, hey, this house is, too loud, they're having loud parties and such. The police show up and turns out, okay, who lives here? You got 5 people raise their hands, then that now raises, but if we only had one complaint in however long, I just feel that trying to be proactive and putting things on the books, we've got enough regulations that we don't need to be putting something on the books, waiting for something to happen. Look, we got an ordinance, we can get you.
The other thing that they mention is about the code requires that structures are repaired within 48 hours if they have issues like broken plumbing, unsafe wiring, or dangerous cooking equipment. If repairs aren't made, an inspector may close the structure.
we have a minimum housing code that's already in place.
Okay,
I think that addresses a lot of that.
okay.
I think this is pretty restrictive as it is.
Okay.
But right now, we have no code in regards to boarding houses.
Right, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the way the state views it, if it's not listed in your ordinance, you go to the nearest use,
Just comparable.
nearest comparable use. So, that opens up quite a bit when you don't necessarily have something that specifically speaks to it. I love flexibility. I think that's great when you come to ordinances and interpreting it, but there are certain instances where you would like to have something to point to.
Okay, it's a public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on the proposed development ordinance amendment? Hearing none, need a motion and a second to close the public hearing.
I'll make a
Motion to
motion.
close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Need a motion and a second to approve or deny the ordinance amendment, Article 2, Section 10.16, Article 4, Section 10.1 through 5, and Article 4, Section 10.149, to add language to the development ordinance to define and create a use type for boarding houses. I make the motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay. Now, moving on to number 3, development ordinance for short-term rentals. Public hearing has been scheduled to consider an ordinance amendment to Article 2, Section 10.16, Article 4, Section 10.135, and Article 4, Section 10.136, adding language to the development ordinance to define and create a use type for boarding houses. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on the proposed development ordinance amendment?
Should that have been
This is
short-term?
short-term
That should be
rentals.
for short-term.
Yeah, this is short-term. Yeah, it should have been, yeah. For short-term rentals. It's just a typo.
Yeah, sorry, for short-term rentals. Aaron?
Thank you, Mayor. Very similar to the boarding house amendment, this was another item that council had directed staff to look into. The new amendment would now permit short-term rentals to operate inside the city limits as an approved use by right in the RG, R7, R9, R12, B1, and B2 zoning districts. Additional notes were created for the permitted use that would require further regulation of the potential short-term rental use. Planning Board recommended approval of the text amendment with a 4-2 vote. The discussion of the number of occupants per bedroom was a concern for a member of the opposition. As you can see on the screen, the definition now would read, a zoning permit is required to operate the use. No signage advertising the use is permitted on site. All exterior lighting shall be residential in nature. 1 parking space per bedroom is required, not including on-street parking. Overnight occupancy would not exceed 2 persons per bedroom. Sorry. And also, the furnished dwelling that is rented as a whole for periods of less than 30 days consecutively for compensation, these should be rented for traveling activities including but not limited to vacation, leisure, recreational, or employment. This does not include hotels, motels, boarding homes, or bed and breakfast. And the point of the definition is to not make it where anyone could rent specific bedrooms. You would now have to rent the whole house, which I think was the concern that was brought up before, that individuals who were doing short-term rentals were renting individual bedrooms within the house. This would make it where you would have to rent the entire house.
Well, I know that we want to try to encourage boutique hotels downtown. My only concern about this is the on-street parking.
I'd like to see there be no on-street parking. They would have to have their own parking lot or parking pad.
I have to disagree with that because I think that during the day from 9 to 5, it's the parking issue, but at night, I mean, we're trying to like cycle the parking. And so from 5 to in the morning, when most people have to check out by 10, that's the highest and best use of the parking, I would think, for downtown. And most businesses downtown don't have the opportunity. It's not like they have a parking lot to be able to provide that parking for someone. But most downtown businesses don't have parking. If we want to be able to have a boutique hotel at some point in the future.
My thoughts is the short-term rentals, where the properties are rented inside subdivisions.
Doesn't include motels and hotels, so that's, if we want,
Yeah.
this ordinance doesn't include that.
Yeah, this would be for residential
Residential
properties.
properties.
So if you have a house that you want to use use an Airbnb, for example. If I had a house that I would like to use for an Airbnb, I would rent the entire house.
But could you do that within a residential neighborhood then? If you just,
says-
you had a 4-bedroom house, you just rent the whole house out
Mhm.
as a,
Could be, sure.
That's currently how Airbnbs.
And that's what they're doing now anyway.
Yeah.
Restate the, zoning, classifications they could have them in. I know one of them is an R12, which would,
Yes, R12, R9, R7, RG, B2 and B1. And the reason those are there, because you can't have homes in those zones.
But you're saying this wouldn't, the parking thing wouldn't apply to commercial property?
Commercial property in the sense, well, B1 doesn't have a parking, I mean, your underlying zoning would still be there. So B1 doesn't have a parking requirement. So it wouldn't change anything on the B1 property.
So it wouldn't change anything on B1?
Mhm.
Do we need to make that clear on there? Because that's not the way I read it.
It could just be added excluding B1. I mean, you can just have that as part of the, decide to move forward, you can have that as part of the motion. Excluding B1 in the criteria. So basically, right.
Anybody else have a problem with it?
It is a little confusing. And I was wondering also about, you know, 2 people per room, 2 adults per room or whatever. What if that's 2 adults with a child? I mean, a small child, what, they gotta rent a whole nother room somewhere I mean, I don't know. I just, you know, I could see where they might have a child or a baby that they might need to have in the room with them, you know. So just another thought, but I do think it's a little bit confusing about as far as parking and especially in the business zones and stuff, how that would be affected.
I think that was one of the concerns that was brought up whenever the per rooms were being discussed very early on. Council had a concern about individuals renting all these individual rooms within the house and not having enough property there to support the cars. I mean, is it an arbitrary number with the 2? I can probably say, you can say that. There are very few 1-bedroom houses in Graham. So essentially you're looking at how many bedrooms do you have versus the space. If you rent a whole house, you could essentially have people sleeping in them.
Yeah. You could have 10 people in the house, you know, if you got a 5-bedroom house. And I wouldn't want them like, you know, if they've lived in a neighborhood parking on the street, you know, clogging
They
up the
do.
streets, and they will. They will.
I live right beside
I mean,
and that's,
I don't know how you stop
Air-
that, but I
Airbnb-
mean, that's,
Airbnb, and I mean, there were
the-
7 cars there yesterday.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with them, but just from my experience of being beside one for probably 3 years now, they generate a lot of trash. I mean, oh my gosh, I've never seen so much trash. They have 2 trash cans out there, and I promise you, every single week, they are full, and 2 recycler things. It's just a different, they're using a residential property for commercial use, and it is a lot of turnover. There's always a lot of cars. I mean, most houses do not accommodate 7 cars.
right,
And I mean, I
exactly.
could show you picture after picture after picture.
I could show you some.
Yeah, I personally don't have a problem with them. I try to be a good neighbor. But I could absolutely see people and there's not enough room really to park in the street. If you park in the street, it becomes a 1-lane street because
Yep.
it's just not that wide. It's the typical old residential road. And I could see in a subdivision, you know, it being, you know, you got, let's say you have 1 on a street of 10, probably not a problem, but you got 9 on a street of 10, I promise you're gonna have a problem. So I don't know. I mean, I do think the parking can absolutely be an issue. Luckily, the person beside me has a double long driveway and they're able to fit 7 cars on their property, but I will say that's very unusual. Most people can't do that. And there's a lot of traffic that's generated from those Airbnbs. So something to think about.
That's my only, I have no problem with it. I think it's well over, long time coming, needs to be done now. My only thing is I don't want them to be able
The only thing about that is that that's basically looking as if there's available parking on the street. So if there's on-street parking within that area, then they have a right to use that space.
And if it's a public road, right, you can't,
Well,
can't
it's a
really,
public road that has not been restricted.
right,
So,
right.
yeah, so if it's an area, we want to be able to control that from there, because it'll be a use by right.
Mhm.
So that's the spin about it, is that it's just addressing it in the sense that you need to make sure that you have available parking for whoever is trying to utilize this space.
But that's dictated, it's like by city ordinance, like the 25-foot road, you can't park on the street.
Yeah, so,
7-foot, you can park on.
yeah,
one side,
house
31,
over
you
here
can park
may
on both.
have the ability to use it, where over here you may not. So
And that's gonna be dictated by ordinance regardless.
it's hit
of
about
where it's
ordinate traffic schedule, where you're located, all the above.
Okay. Yes, Tom.
Yes, a couple of questions, Mayor. As I understand it, and there was some reference to it in the discussion already, it's termed in your proposed ordinance as short-term rentals. This is really aimed at Airbnbs.
Well, the complaint came in actually as a residential house. I do not know. In fact, I would guess that the complaint, I assume, I don't think that the actual complaint necessarily was Airbnb, but I think that's just what people typically refer to, Verbo,
Yeah, I mean,
Airbnb, that sort of stuff.
Not, I didn't mean brand specific, but those one and multiple night rentals.
I don't know how this person is advertising it, but the neighbor complained saying that there are people renting that, space as a short-term rental, but I think it's being used more for a boarding house.
Which would be covered by the one you already did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, but my fundamental question on the Airbnb question and any generic name that falls in that general category, I was under the impression, but perhaps I'm not up to date, that the state had defined Airbnbs and given certain parameters that I'm not sure the city can change. Do I not understand that correctly?
I'm not sure, we didn't find anything with the state to find it. We did see where challenges to Airbnb ordinances in other locations failed when they made it to a court, because it was restrictive beyond what they said a city could do. Most notably, I think it was Wilmington was one of them that tried to go a little far and beyond on restricting, and I can't remember how far they went, but I do remember that being one of the cities. The definition that you see here is similar to some of the ones that we have here in the state. The problem that you have is that you're limited as far as how far you can go with your restrictions. One of them, I think you can't register them or something like that. It's a few other ones that you just could not do.
Well, as I understand it, one of the things that you cannot do, but again, I'll certainly be subject to correction, is allow people to rent out a single room in their house, which in the big picture, many people consider a better arrangement, because then you have a vested interest by the homeowner in who's renting the room in their house. So I'm just not
But
aware.
I think that restriction is if the property owner is living there. See, what you end up happening is somebody rents the house and then sublets out the rooms to multiple people. And then you have an issue where got multiple people all sharing a bathroom, sharing a shower, sharing things that cause controversy or whatever, I guess, I don't know, but, that, it's not the property owner necessarily living there.
All right. Mayor, I need to ask you this. I do not know this personally, but I have certainly gotten a call or more about it. And you were careful to recuse yourself in the earlier item in which you volunteered that you had property nearby. Do you own or operate any Airbnbs in
I-
Graham?
I do have an Airbnb. I do personally have an Airbnb.
And would not that create a similar conflict in your voting on this measure and discussing it?
Well, that's not, I mean, taxes, I pay taxes too, but I vote on taxes. But I can certainly defer to Bob. I have no problem.
You don't
Um,
stand to gain
what-
financially,
what-
so.
One or the other, but yeah, I mean, I think I was fine to discuss it and to vote on it, but I'll certainly defer to Bob if he would like to, comment.
Let me just comment, say, I don't know, we looked at 160D. Typically, this kind of regulation, it will impact all Airbnbs, not just yours.
Right.
In other words, you would be sitting and you would be voting on something that would apply citywide. It's just.
Same thing like taxes,
It's
right?
just, yeah, it's just not you individually here, and you're not, and it's not a consideration of your Airbnb. It's a consideration of the whole ordinance, in a regulation of Airbnbs. So the way I read the conflict statute is, although you own it, that doesn't necessarily mean that you couldn't sit and you couldn't vote in the regulation of it for the whole city.
Okay.
So, Brian?
And just one further question though, Mayor, in terms of part of the discussion, does your Airbnb rely at all on on-street parking?
Actually, I have parking in downtown, but I referred to that about B1 district is because one of the things that we've tried to look at getting is a downtown, boutique hotel, which would rely on street parking. And I have no plans of having an boutique hotel, so. But I absolutely have a lot of parking, actually.
So I just, can we clarify, like, is it a short-term rental or is it Airbnb? Or are they both, are they
Airbnb.
synonymous? I mean,
Synonymous.
I know they're both, of Airbnb is a short-term rental, right?
Right, it's just the name
So-
brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, do we need to clarify that too? I mean, I don't know. Or just call it a short-term rental and that's all inclusive? I guess, okay.
And I
guess-
guess Aaron, are you saying that we would need, like, you're saying that the B1, even if you didn't mention it in the motion, that's how it should be, but for clarity, you're asking for the council to mention the B1 specifically in the motion to make it clear, is that right?
I think what I was getting at before was that you have single-family homes in the B1. So you have to call out B1 if you're going to say anything differently, I guess is what I'm saying. Because essentially, a house can be in a B1 just like it can be in a B2 and all the other residential zonings. So if there's something that you're saying that's different, then it needs to be stated.
So if we don't mention it and we just pass it as it's written here, then someone could, if they wanted to do something, they could just come back to the council and say, we want to change it or get special use, or what would they have to do?
What is it? Give me an example of what
I'm
you're saying.
just saying, if someone wanted to do a boutique hotel downtown or in the B1 or B2 district, somewhere close to the downtown area, what would they need to do to be able to? I want to make sure that wouldn't restrict them from that. Cause I'd love to see that downtown.
But would a hotel fall under the same guidelines as short-term rental?
Well, I was gonna say,
I don't think
we
it would.
define
It does not.
we define a hotel already,
Yeah, it
so,
doesn't include motels or hotels.
yeah, so if someone wanna do a hotel, then that would just be
Okay,
the criteria
Go
needed.
back to your
to do a hotel.
definition.
Different, that's different.
I'm just only seeing a blurb. I'm not seeing the rest of the, like, the headings and stuff, so.
Short-term rental does not include hotels, motels, boarding homes, or bed and breakfast.
Okay,
Which is a B and B. That's what I'm saying, so that,
Yeah, that's a
different.
challenge you have with Airbnbs and bed and
I mean-
breakfasts, is they're very similar.
well, what's the difference?
I think with the bed and breakfast, they
Ignorant.
provide you with breakfast.
breakfast.
And I think that was the prevailing thing we saw, because that was one of the questions we did ask.
What's an Airbnb?
Airbnb is,
You on your
I
own,
mean, you just on your own.
That's just a name brand.
yeah.
It'd be like-
rent the
Okay.
place.
It'd be like Soda Pop,
But I
we'll
do
call it
think,
Pepsi.
I do think that the reason it's different is exactly what Tom said. Airbnb, there's typically a person living in that place. That's your host.
That
so to
provides their
speak,
meals and
that
what
provides
such. Okay,
meals and things
okay.
like that, yeah. And
okay.
so you have more of a owner on site kind of situation.
Okay.
Okay, all right. To have a motion to, close public hearing.
Make a motion to close.
All,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. I need a motion and a second to approve the ordinance to amend Article 2, Section 10.16, Article 4, Section 10.135, and Article 4, Section 10.136.
I make a motion that we approve.
And is that right? Is those references correct? Because it still says boarding houses on here.
The,
I guess that last sentence though, overnight, not exceed 2 persons per bedroom.
You don't like that?
Oh, just like mine.
well, that's, I mean, if they have a child with
But
them,
it's a home. You're not
Yeah.
renting, I mean, unless it's a single bedroom home, which is pretty rare.
Well, like
mean-
Aaron said, there are very few single bedroom homes.
And I guess I would say we're a complaint-driven society. I don't know that anybody would know that somebody's got a child in there
Yeah.
while they're not gonna have an extra car if they're a child.
Yeah, that's sure.
We're just trying to get clarification on the references.
Teacher.
We got a great item coming up for you, Tom.
talking about that. Val.
Okay, is it Article 2, Section 10.16? Okay, all right. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the ordinance amendment to Article 2, Section 10.16, Article 4, Section 10.135, and Article 4, Section 10.136, to add the language to the developmental ordinance to define and create a use. Did I read Did I read the right
For-
one? For,
yep.
okay, for short-term rentals, yeah,
Right.
okay.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Old business, 2024 pedestrian plan. Aaron and I have worked on this. Ask that we just postpone it one more time because we're trying to do a final clean through and we made quite a few changes. It's coming, but we want it to be right. And it's, gosh, it's like 100 pages or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we've worked,
Table it.
everything else is, I think, it's non-controversial stuff.
Madam
Uh,
Mayor, I make a motion that we table this till the next meeting.
Okay, second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Request for ordinance text amendment, chapter 4, animals and fowls. This is specifically for Tom Boney. City council will consider a request from a citizen to amend chapter 4, animals and fowl, Article 1, section 4.5B, to allow an additional domesticated pot-bellied pig in an area over 2 acres. I recognize Assistant City Manager Aaron Holland. Again, we are a complaint-driven society.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna actually turn this over to Ms. Ramsey here, since this is a request by a citizen, but as you read,
be alone.
it is to increase the amount of potbelly pigs you can have per lot. Currently, you're restricted to only 1 per lot with other requirements in place. She has proposed that we increase that no more than 2 per lot, as long as the individual has over 2 acres. If council does decide to move forward with the ordinance, you would need to direct staff to bring it back in a format that you can approve. So basically, what you're doing tonight is hearing a request from the citizen, and if you would like to move forward, direct us to bring it back, and then we'll put it together and bring it back to you next month.
I personally would like to move forward only, and this is if and only she brings that pot-bellied pig to the next.
I asked her to bring it
To the
tonight.
next meeting, both of them.
Yes, go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, this is the best. Hi, I'm, oh, man, I could have sold tickets to this show. I'm Crystal Ramsey. I live at 720 West Hardin Street. So I do have this proposal. I currently am on 4.6 acres. When we purchased the home, ivy and invasive plants are taking over our property. We had to have 38 trees removed when we purchased the house because they're all dying from the ivy. So we do have some animal friends who are trying to help us with that, and that we currently have goats. Goats eat from the top down, however, so they don't kill the ivy, they just weaken it. We've been trying to manually cut it off the trees. So the what pigs bring to the table is an element of permaculture and the ability to actually kill the ivy, as opposed to our goat friends that are just eating it and enjoying that. Because pigs are herd species, it actually having only 1 pig creates a problem, because there's a condition called single pig syndrome. I'm not an animal expert, but I am an academic, and that alone means that I've done an obscene amount of research on pigs lately, but so a singular pig actually can create problems and behavioral concerns, and it can become an aggressive animal. So it actually facilitates more problem by only having 1. So if we were to get 1, we would actually want 2, just so that we don't have aggressive animals on our property.
And you guys are located, like, when you go towards Burlington, right? Are
We're
you
the
on the,
last house in Graham? The next
Yep.
house beside us is in Burlington.
are you past Trailhead Church?
Yes. We're
Okay,
beside In Touch Hair Salon.
okay, yes, yes,
Oh,
yes, on the left.
Yeah. We put all the apple trees in the front yard.
Yes, yes, the old Eric Bishop property.
Yes,
Yep.
that's exactly right.
Yep.
That's exactly right.
So, and the pigs will be in the back, is that right?
They will, they'll be in the
Okay.
woods.
Okay.
And
Doing
away.
what they do,
What's
right?
that? Doing
Doing
what
what
they
they
do.
do.
That's correct.
okay?
Together.
Do we have anybody here against potbelly pigs?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
They have rights too.
okay.
Do I sit down now?
Okay,
Like to see, my name's Keith Westbrook, 604 Chalkwater. I'd like to see, because what I know about animals, period, you gotta have two animals. Can't have one, he's gotta have a friend, right? Pigs are known to be like that, if I'm not mistaken, so he needs two pigs. She got land for it too.
okay. And I need a motion to approve. Any
Madam Mayor, I make a motion
Madam
that
Mayor,
we direct,
I would, like to add something to this, that there be no more than 2 pigs on any given property in the city.
Want the staff to write
yeah,
define the ordinance to add 2 pigs of 2 acres. What Aaron said.
2 pigs per property.
even if it's
Period.
12 acres
I don't
Yeah.
care.
Because,
I grew
Over
up on
2
a farm
acres.
and
or
you
per
got-
2 acres.
well, then you
Over
have
2 acres.
multiple
pigs per
pigs,
2
then you
acres.
start having other issues.
Right, you're gonna
So-
have water runoff, foul smell.
So this motion that's written on here, you don't want that.
Well, we just need to direct them, right,
Yes.
to,
This is you want a motion for you to write it. Is that correct?
yeah, that's what I was
Not to
saying.
approve an amendment right now.
Right.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we direct city staff to rewrite the ordinance for the potbelly pigs. And then
For 2 per
to be
property
for 2 per property,
with a
no,
minimum
no
of 2
smaller
acres.
than 2 acres.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Only person on the agenda is Mr. Tally. You've already spoke.
Those Keith.
Alley 88 Southview Street. I'd look at, y'all to look, or how the staff look at RG Residential General. I think that it's covers a lot of the northern part of the city, and where if you took out an older house, probably in even my neighborhood, that you could put a single wide trailer back. And I think that has been like that for a while, and I'd like to address that. I don't like people to feel like they're at a disadvantage if something goes wrong with the house next door. I just want to clarify that manufactured housing cannot, and I'm not saying modular, manufacturing housing. Even if it's modular, it should be a permanent fixture to a permanent foundation, but I'd like,
Or something without a chassis.
right. But also, we need to protect the older neighborhoods is what I'm getting at. And so I'd like to see if y'all could get the staff to address that and look into it, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So is that what council wants us to do? I guess I'm trying to understand what the request is.
I think what he's saying, well, I didn't, correct me if what you're saying, I think he's concerned that if someone in an RG owning, like their house burns down, that was a house, that somebody could just put a single wide trailer beside them.
Okay.
Just when we move into the city to pay property taxes to make sure our investments are protected. Okay, and I just want to make sure that RG doesn't allow single wide manufactured housing to go into an established neighborhood. Okay, so I don't know what the ordinance is now, but I'd like to, for y'all to look into it, because I've heard that it would allow that here recently, and I was just curious if it did or did not.
It would. The challenge that you have is that you're gonna make a lot of properties non-conforming. Because,
But would they not be grandfathered in up until the point?
I mean, grandfathered in the sense that they're there and existing, but it also at the same time does make them non-conforming. I mean, you essentially are, I don't know how many properties we have that are RG.
Will it be to my disadvantage too, because I have to? You understand? So it's not to my advantage of leaving it like it is, it's to my disadvantage. Leaving it like it is to my advantage, but just thinking to protect neighborhoods in the future, just like, where we currently live at in that neighborhood. If it's RG, then it would allow for single wide homes to go in that area there, and that wouldn't be appropriate. So maybe you should look at the ordinance where it protects certain areas, especially historical areas more.
But you don't have a problem if somebody has a trailer and the trailer burns up, putting a trailer
Try to
back.
buy.
But I think
went
what
to-
he, I
I
think
went
what you're
with
saying
Chris
is
Rollins-
somebody has a
with Chris
residential
Rollins, as you know,
house.
I have a trailer, okay, on a piece of land, and my great uncle put it there. And Chris Rollins had told me, he said that when the trailer was, it's a 1950s model, so it's aluminum wiring, and we wanted to upgrade it. And Chris said, well, I'll let you upgrade it trailer for trailer, but I'm not gonna allow you to add an extra one. But my grandfather's been around the block, still on the same land that we were in discussion tonight. And somehow my grandfather got a little piece of land zone RG right in the middle of all the industrial land.
Mhm.
So, I could put as many trailers there as I want, I guess, but I'm not gonna do that. But it's to protect older neighborhoods and things like that. So that means that if a house was to burn down in a certain neighborhood, they couldn't put a trailer back there. But is it okay if you had a trailer and it burned down, put your trailer back? Well, sure, it's already one there. It should be put back.
Well, I
So
guess
is there
the
a way to
question,
do that where the trailer, if it burnt down, could go back with the trailer? But on the same line, if an old house burnt down in a nice neighborhood, they could not go back putting the trailer amongst the nice houses. That's what I'm getting
I
at.
guess
I'm
the
trying to protect people's investment.
I guess the question would be, would council want us to look at removing that as a use by right in RG, single family homes? I mean, I'm sorry, single wide trailers, just do away with
That's
it.
covered under manufactured dwellings.
Right, so, is that something that, based off, if this is something that you want us to do, is to bring back something to remove it from RG? I don't know if staff's in a position to look at an area and determine whether or not it fits that area here, but not necessarily here. I think that puts us in a litigation situation. But if we just removed it, if a mobile home's there, if something happens, by right, they can come back within a 6-month time frame and put one back. If a house is there and it burns down, by it not being a use by right, then you just could not bring in a manufactured home. So I guess the question is, that would be the solution that I would throw out, would be just to remove it from RG.
I agree with Aaron.
Now, I would need to talk to Bob and Brian to make sure we're not, because we are now creating a non-conforming situation for anyone that sits on an RG property with a mobile home. So, I mean, I guess this is something that we need to talk about, but that would be the solution in my head, you know,
But if they have a
But-
trailer, they could put back a trailer, right?
within a 6-month time frame. Because
But
you're not,
see,
But how are you gonna track that? I mean, who had what, where, I mean,
because when you read the
That's all-
definition of manufactured dwellings, there are like 4 categories,
mm,
you know,
single A, double A, the years, all that stuff's
Right.
there.
but yet now, if you looked on YouTube, you know, Elon Musk is developing a modular home that's basically on wheels,
Yeah.
you know, 400 square feet. Bring it in, it pops up. It's got solar panels to provide power. But that's considered would be a manufactured dwelling.
The only issue with
Would-
that, it wouldn't be permitted in Graham because we have a certain criteria size-wise that it would have to meet. So like, that would fall more in line with a camper, which you couldn't have a camper on a lot by itself.
Yeah. But in watching the video, it's one of those things, it's almost like Lego. One unit's 400 square feet, but it's designed so you could hook them or stack them, or you know, however much square footage you want to have.
I don't think we can do anything about that right now.
But I'm
If
just
you ca-
saying,
If you can't, you can't. I just thought that I would throw it out there because 20-some years ago, we bought a lot near our house where the house had gotten tore down, and we bought it from a government, I guess it was a judicial sale that we bought it. And as soon as we bought it, we had all these mobile home dealerships wanting to buy it for single wide, and that would have been less than a half a block from me. And so, needless to say, it's still a vacant lot today. So to me, I can make more money selling it to a dealership like that than I could actually sell it to a contractor a lot of times. But I just got to think with all this stuff going on that maybe we should look into it. And if it's nothing we can do, it's nothing we can do. I'm just saying that would have definitely devalued that area had that gone in there. You know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking that we pay property taxes in the city and we have ordinances to protect our investments, and that's why we're here. And so I'm just curious to find out if there's any options out there anyway. That's all. If it can't be done, it can't be done. But,
Well, maybe a solution would be for staff to look at the RG where it is zoned RG to see if that's an issue.
That would be the thing, just to see what the impact would be, how many RG properties do we have? And then that can kind of give us an idea. There's not that many RG properties. We do have RG areas, but like individual lot properties, we probably don't have terribly many of them. But that's something we can definitely look at and
Okay.
go from there.
Okay, Mr. Westbrook?
Keith Westbrook, 604 Troutwater Court in Graham. What I want to talk about tonight is a problem that it seems like every day gets worse over there at the high school. They're parking on both sides of the road to pick up kids. First off, that's the biggest safety hazard there is because they got to cross 2 lanes of traffic to get to that car. So you got kids crossing. You got the ones that may want to, like me, come out of my cul-de-sac. The other day, we was trying to take my granddaughter to piano lessons over in Burlington. Absolutely 3:45, the wrong time. Pull up to go out of my cul-de-sac. There's 2 cars parked on the right lane, 2 cars parked beside of it. The only way I have to get out is to go in the ones that are supposed to be turning in. So it's like there's so many safety hazards going on over there. I've talked to the school safety officer. I haven't heard nothing back. He said that he was gonna get with the Graham Police Department, see, talk to them. I would like to see the city, schools, everybody get together, and instead of just ignoring people about problems like this, to take care of it, because it seems like to me, we're just waiting for something to happen. Seriously, waiting for something to happen. And anything, I know, I don't feel like it's the city. The city has some responsibility. I think it's more the school system. But you got to remember this. Graham High School hasn't put a flag up in 4 weeks. So they can't even do that. So I don't really have too much expectations of getting them to do anything about it. But I sure would like to see somebody do something. I don't want to see nobody hit over there, and I'm afraid that's going to happen. Crossing 2 lanes of traffic, cars turning every which way. I've even gone as far as to ask the principal, can we not put people from staff out here during the dismissal so that these things aren't happening to protect our children? And I haven't seen a soul, so that was the answer on that, I guess. But I would like to see if we could, anything we can do is better than what we got over there. Like I say, that day there, we couldn't even get out of the cul-de-sac. So we was tied up there for 10 minutes. So guess what? Madison was 10 minutes late for her class. That creates a problem for me because I don't think nobody should have the right to restrict the ones that live there from leaving or coming to their house or whatever. So anyway, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Westbrook. Bob, you have anything? Brian? Aaron? Renee? Are we ready for this Christmas lunch tomorrow? We're all ready? And who's gonna win the door decorating contest?
Tomorrow.
What do you win, Megan?
It's really a door, that's a
Bragging
hallway.
rights.
Yeah, we took care of it.
You did the whole hallway.
Time off.
Okay, Megan, anything from you? Okay, Joey?
No, ma'am.
Ricky,
Just wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Bobby?
Likewise.
Just wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yes, we greatly appreciate what staff does, appreciate them very, very much, and hope we can go through a nice holiday and everybody stays safe and bring in a great new 2025 year.
Yep.
So,
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion